Yeah, the live stream's open. Okay. Our panelist representing the Order of Demolay and the Freemasons today has just entered. Very worshipful Django, are you in?
Yes.
Good evening. Django, I'd like
Yes.
to introduce you to our international speaker today. This is a non-Masonic event. Tony Harvey, who is speaking to us on scouting and Freemasonry. Tony, Django is the Grand Master of the Order of Demolay in the Philippines.
How do you do, sir?
Hi. Happy to meet you also, sir.
Very good to meet you. And I understand that you stood in at short notice, and I thank you for doing so. And very nice to meet you.
Yes.
I don't know whether you know Governor Obed, who's the president of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. He's also with us, and is your co-panelist for today.
You beat me to the punch, Governor Obed.
Yeah.
Governor Django is the head of our youth arm. We call it the Demolay organization.
Yeah. Pleased to meet you.
Hi, sir.
Hi, hello, Django.
Hi, sir.
How is the head of the Grandmaster Supreme Council of Demone?
What, sir? What? Ano?
Where you address
SCOD.
properly?
SCOD, the Supreme Council, Order of Demolay, is under the umbrella of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. We are handling the youth organization of Freemasonry.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I heard about that. Yeah, pleased to meet you. Yeah.
Hi. Likewise, sir. Likewise, Governor.
Progress.
So happy to meet the fellow scouts in Tony.
I think we may be getting a little bit of feedback from.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yes, the second.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Governor Obed, I think it's because you have two devices.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, because I was trying to get you earlier on. Thank you. All right, so it's okay now.
Gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock. So I turn it over now to our Director General for Programs, Ozone. You can start whenever you're ready.
Kuya Hofi, please unmute me. Okay.
You're good. You're good to go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ozone Azanza. I'm the Director General for programs of the Mabini Society for Nationhood. And I would like to welcome you all to this event, the second quarterly fellowship of the Mabini Society for Nationhood. We have for this evening a very exciting topic. At least for me, this is something that I have not yet heard in my whole life. And so I guess it goes for many of you. And this is also the first time that we're having an international speaker in our MSN fellowship. So expect to be excited for the whole duration. We would like to inform that we are live streaming in the MSN Facebook page. And before we kick off, just two reminders. Number one, that you mute your microphones if you're not speaking. And number two, for those who will have questions to our speaker and our panel of reactors, please do type in your questions into the chat box so that I would be able to monitor them and throw the questions to our speakers and reactors later on. Having said that, let us now start the ball rolling by way of an invocation, and that will be led by our program director, Michael Benifayo.
Good evening. Kuya Ozon, can you hear me? Hello?
Please go ahead,
Yeah.
Kuya.
Yes. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to gather in your name. The time we spent together is important to us all. To acknowledge your presence with us, that we may open and sensitive to your leadership on the important matters we are about to discuss tonight. We therefore seek your grace and wisdom, O Lord, as we meet together. Grant us the necessary strength, wisdom, and courage to continue our efforts with enthusiasm and creativity. As we experience the friendship we have for each other, may we be truly united in our commitment to the high ideals and the work we do for the good of others. We begin this time together in your name and dedicate what we do to you and your purposes. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Director Michael. We stand by for the Philippine National Anthem.
Alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang hinirang, tuyang ka ng pag-ibig, sa manlulupi, di ka pagsisiin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniringning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng luwan, hatid pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya dapat may mag-aapit ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
For our opening remarks, let us welcome our Vice Chairman, Pacifico Boy Anyag, Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees of MSN, and 2008 past Grand Master of the Philippine Freemasons. Most worshipful, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening. Am I being heard clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, good evening. In behalf of the Board of Trustees, chaired by former Chief Justice Reynato Puno, and of our President, Teddy Calao, I welcome you all to this second quarterly fellowship, though through a virtual platform, of the Mabini Society for Nationhood. And let me especially extend our fraternal warm embrace to our distinguished invited guests. Worshipful Brother Tony Harvey, our lecturer, who is the Prestonian Lecturer of the United Grand Lodge of England in 2012, who will deliver to us the lecture on Scouting and Freemasonry, two parallel organizations.
Thank you, sir.
And our reactors from the two organizations, we are so honored tonight by the presence of no less than the President of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, my kababayan and compadre, former Bulacan Governor, and also my colleague in the Philippine College of Rotary Governors, Pare Roberto Obet Pagdanganan.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
No less from the group of the Freemasons, the Grand Master of the Appendant Organization for Young People or Young Men of Freemasonry. We have with us the Honorable Adriano Django Durano III, the Grand Master of the Supreme Council of the Order of Dimulay, to react in behalf of the Freemasons. You see, these two organizations could perhaps be considered as among the oldest existing organization in this country. And all of us, I'm sure, are not only familiar with them, but in fact, members of or have been associated one way or another with them. I need not mention anymore our Masonic membership, of course. But perhaps many of us, even in our youth, have been members of the Boy Scouts. And let me make myself as an example. I was a Boy Scout during my early school days, as many of us must have also been. I belong to a family of Boy Scouters. My father, and Governor Obet knows this, was then the erstwhile chairman of the Bulacan Council of the Boy Scouts during his lifetime. That was my father. And my elder brother, up to his death 3 years ago, was the national treasurer of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, serving together with Governor Obet. And I vividly remember that I too, during my elementary school years, was delegate to the 10th World Jamboree held in the Philippines, in Makiling, in 1959. I could not forget that because it was raining while we were camping on a tent. You see, my father, my brother, and myself, while associated with the Boy Scouts, are all Freemasons. With sadness and perhaps some degree of embarrassment, I confess that up to this time, it has never occurred to me, nor did I have any hint whatsoever, that Masonry and Scouting are two parallel organizations. And I can almost be sure that many of you, likewise, did know that there could be similarities between these two organizations. And therefore, that should make all of us excited to learn and be educated in this. And this is exactly one of the objectives of this series of quarterly fellowships that our learned society that we have just recently formally organized would want to achieve. As a society that would engage in academic research and study, the Mabini Society for Nationhood would want to be the forum on the concept of fraternalism and how it contributes to the ideal of nationhood. And so, my friends, let us prepare our minds and hearts to learn and to discover new facets of understanding, in particular about this topic of Freemasonry and Scouting. And so welcome to all, and may this evening be an evening of enlightenment.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman Boy Anyag, for that warm and informative welcome remarks that I suppose really whetted the appetite now of all our participants. And that sets the tone for what we have this evening. I now pass on to you to our President and CEO, Teddy Calao, to introduce our fellowship presenter. Press Teddy.
Thank you. Thank you, DG Ozone. And thank you very much for your welcome remarks, Vice Chair Boy. I'm privileged today to welcome effectively our first, or you would say inaugural international speaker, Tony Harvey from the United Kingdom. Professionally, Tony is a coach, speaker, and consultant specializing in leadership, change, and organizational development. His published books and articles focus on his own model of personal and organizational change, the success cycle. I'd like to highlight that he is both, for over 30 years as a Freemason and for over 50 years as a Scout, a member of these organizations and a leader in both of them. He has been a Freemason for 3 decades and has held provincial roles in the secretarial, membership, mentoring, learning and development, charity and communication areas of Freemasonry. Tony was initiated into the Pioneer Lodge number 9065, the Scout Lodge of Derbyshire, in June 1991. He is a past master of 4 lodges in the craft and a member, founder, or honorary member of lodges and chapters in London, 6 provinces, and 3 overseas districts. Tony conceived, and between 2015 and 2020, was the main author of the United Grand Lodge's Members Pathway, which in June 2019, their program master described as a game changer, quote unquote. He has held a number of Masonic lectureships, including, as you now know, the Prestonian Lecture in 2012, the only lecture sponsored by the United Grand Lodge of England, and the oldest Masonic lectureship in the world. So that was in 2012. Tony is presently a Grand Officer in the Craft, the Royal Ark, and Mark, and in 2 other orders of English Freemasonry. He is currently the Provincial Membership Officer of Nottinghamshire in the United Grand Lodge of England. As a lifelong Scout, he has been with that organization for over 5 decades, having been born to Scouting parents. In 1977, he became a Queen Scout and has held many adult appointments since then. Currently, he is a national volunteer and trainer with the United Kingdom Scout Association and chair of the Appointments Advisory Committee in his hometown of Long Eaton. His wife and daughter are also active in local Scouting. Tony has been involved with many national projects for UK Scouting, including the development of successful methods of recruiting adult volunteers, the adult training scheme, and the transformation of Scouting into a growing and thriving organization. Tony's service to Scouting has been recognized by several National Good Service Awards, the latest being the Bar to Silver Acorn in 2019, for further special distinguished service, and the locally by a Commissioner's Commendation. He is a Gilwell Fellow of the UK Scouting and a Baden-Powell Fellow of the World Scout Federation. In 2018, I might add, he delivered his Prestonian lecture. When he delivered his Prestonian lecture, Tony's former Cub Scout leader invested him with her personal neckerchief 50 years after she had first led him in making his Scout promise. Today, Tony is presenting to us an updated version of his 2012 Prestonian lecture, Scouting and Freemasonry, 2 Parallel Organization, which not only details the often reported parallels between Scouting and Freemasonry, but also describes the historical, current, and possible future relationship between these 2 organizations. And I must add, what Freemasonry can learn from the transformation and growth of the Scouting movement. He has delivered this lecture and other talks in every province of the English Masonic jurisdiction, including a number of overseas districts and venues around the world, including today, right across the earth here in the Philippines. With that, Ladies and gentlemen, members and officers of the Masonic Society for Nationhood, it is my privilege to present to you our inaugural international speaker, scout, and worshipful brother, Tony Harvey. Tony?
Well, thank you very much indeed for that wonderful introduction. And can I start by thanking the Mabini Society for Nationhood for inviting me and honoring me by appointing me as your inaugural international speaker. My talk today is my 2012 Prestonian lecture, the title of which you can see there, Scouting and Freemasonry, Two Parallel Organizations. But I ask you to note that at the end of the title is a question mark. It is for you to decide whether or not you agree that these two organizations have parallels and the consequences, if you like, of those historic and possibly future parallels and what we might choose to do with them. Now, I should explain to you that as well as being a Freemason, I am a volunteer with the Scouts, and I have been an active member of that organization here in the United Kingdom since the age of 8. In this lecture, I'm going to look at the parallels between Scouting and Freemasonry, at the relationship Scouting's founder, Robert Baden-Powell, had with Freemasonry, and at the relationship between the two organizations today here in the United Kingdom, and at the opportunities for a mutually beneficial relationship in the future. Now, I should explain, my lecture is inevitably based largely on the situation here in the United Kingdom, but I do hope that it will act as an example and perhaps even as an inspiration for what may be possible elsewhere. Now, before I start, I want to pay tribute to Brother William Preston, who was the foremost Masonic educator of his age, the late 18th century, and after whom the Prestonian lectureship is named. The Prestonian lectures are the only lectures held under the authority of the United Grand Lodge of England, which is the oldest Grand Lodge in the world. It was founded in 1717. Each year, a member is appointed to deliver a lecture on a Masonic topic of his own choosing to educate and entertain a general audience. And it's customary for the Prestonian lecture to be printed in booklet form for sale, the profits of which go to a charity or charities of the lecturer's choice, more of which later. The question is, why did I choose the topic of Scouting and its relationship with Freemasonry? Now, I have delivered this lecture on 130 occasions for audiences around the world, and I have found that over 2/3 of Freemasons have at some point in their lives made the Scout promise. Now, there has to be a reason for this. For me, it begs the question, if so many of today's Freemasons were once Scouts, is there something in Freemasonry that resonates for Scouts and which attracts them in particular? Now, for those of you who were not Scouts, I will just briefly introduce the founder of Scouting, Robert Baden-Powell, who we often refer to as just BP. Baden-Powell rose to fame after his defense of the town of Mafeking in South Africa during the Anglo-Boer War at the end of the 19th century. He was a true boy's own hero who had introduced innovative, or at least they were then innovative, small group techniques into British Army training. Having been asked to adapt these to offer to young people, he ran an experimental camp on Brownsea Island in the south of England before publishing Scouting for Boys in 1908. The publication of Scouting for Boys triggered the start of what became the world's largest youth organization. In its 114-year history, more than 500 million people have been Scouts around the world. Today's membership is over 50 million young people and adults in more than 200 countries and territories. And there are 620,000 members of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines today. So let's now look at the key parallels between Scouting and Freemasonry, and just 3 differences. Even more parallels are described in my book that accompanies the lecture. You'll hear about that later. The most important parallel is that both Scouting and Freemasonry, 2 values-based membership organizations, are built on exactly the same moral principles. These are expressed in both the Scout Promise and in Masonic ritual. Although, of course, they use different language, they come down to these 3 key elements. First of all, our faith and beliefs. Secondly, care for and service to others. And thirdly, our particular approach to developing ourselves. Now, members of both organizations make a promise in order to join. This is not unique. Many organizations ask us to make a written declaration. However, in both Scouting and Freemasonry, that promise is made in front of the members of the group we are joining, whether it be with our hand on the flag at a Scout meeting or with our hands on the volume of the Sacred Law at a lodge meeting. And indeed, both organizations can be said to be uniformed. Here you will see on the left the current uniform of the UK Scout section for 11 to 14-year-olds, and on the right the apron of an English Master Mason. Uniform is a way of showing our allegiance to an organisation, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, as well as being a way, of course, of displaying our achievements. And incidentally, if any of you doubt whether Freemasonry is uniformed, just ask members of the public who live near your lodge's meeting place how they recognise Freemasons arriving for their lodge. Now, both Scouting and Freemasonry are open to people of all faiths. Scouting has never been a Christian organisation. Freemasonry, however, originally was, but it de-Christianised over the course of the 18th century. They are also open to people of all political views, although in neither organisation are members permitted to promote political views when acting as members. These here on the screen are the 2 current leaders of the main political parties here in the United Kingdom. Whatever your personal opinions in both Scouting and Freemasonry, we silence all political arguments. And incidentally, I have to check the news every morning to see whether or not I have to change the photo that I use in this slide. Now, as a result of these last 2 parallels, both Scouting and Freemasonry quickly became international forces for good. They bring together, both of them bring together people of all nations and of goodwill, based on what we have in common and despite our other differences, whether they be religious or political. Moving on to other parallels, both Scouting and Freemasonry offer their members a system of progression. In Scouting, this is through a carefully structured and balanced program of activities, leading to various badges and awards. In Freemasonry, this is by progressing through the offices in the lodge and by learning more and more about Freemasonry's precepts. The effect in both cases is exactly the same. Our members grow in competence and confidence, becoming better people, better able to live meaningful lives and to make a contribution to the greater good. Another parallel is that, in my country at least, both organisations share the same person as its titular head. Not only is His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England, but since 1975, he's also been the president of the UK Scout Association. However, he's not the first Royal Duke to hold both appointments at the same time. On the right here is His Royal Highness, the Duke of Connaught and Strathearn, who was our Grand Master in England from 1901 until 1939. He was also, from 1913, the President of the Boy Scouts Association, and, as we shall see, a very good friend of Robert Baden-Powell. Now, my final parallel is a very personal one. I was born into Scouting. My parents were both active members, my father being a Rover Scout and my mother being what was then called a Lady Cubmaster. A Lady Cubmaster. Now, if her appointment puzzles you, please understand that at 8 years of age, wolf cubs were considered far too young to have mistresses. My parents first met each other at a Scout event. Love blossomed, they got married, and some years later, I was born. And all I ever wanted to do was to be a Scout. I joined as soon as I could in the week of my 8th birthday, and I have been an active member ever since. Scouting formed my values and provided me with the framework by which I live my life. At the age of 31, I became a Freemason. I was proposed by Scouting colleagues and I was initiated into a Scouting lodge. I and all those present who were so entitled wore Scout uniform for the ceremony, which was held in my local Scout training centre. I found in Freemasonry an organisation entirely compatible with Scouting, one which has helped me continue my development and which clarifies my purpose in life. Now, let me take you through some key differences. In fact, I'll take you through 3. My first is that Scouting exists primarily for the benefit of young people. We want to attract all young people and offer them skills for life. We accept all children, whatever their background or past behaviours. Freemasonry, however, is fundamentally different. Freemasonry is for mature adults who've already set their course in life. It offers no rehabilitation, but only seeks to make good people better. The second difference is girls. Robert Baden-Powell wrote a book called Scouting for Boys, and yet today, in a growing number of countries, Scouting is a mixed organisation, offering the same opportunities to girls as well as boys. Here, for example, is my daughter Caroline, who also became a Scout at the earliest age possible. In her case, this was when she was 6. She is shown here next to the UK's Chief Scout, Bear Grylls, and this particular image was taken in 2011. But here she is again with the Chief Scout. This photograph was taken in 2019. But Caroline's generation is not the first to be girls in Scouting. This in the centre of this image here is the Wolf Patrol, all of them girls, at the first Scout rally at Crystal Palace near London in 1909. When he saw them, Baden-Powell said to them, "Who the devil are you?" "We're the Wolf Patrol," came the sassy reply. You see, no one had told the girls that they could not join Scouting. Baden-Powell himself was quite comfortable with girls in the Scouts. Indeed, in his original handwritten notes for his scheme, he wrote, "might also be extended to the training of girls." However, his advisors suggested the girls be offered something different. So Baden-Powell founded the Girl Guides with the help of his sister, Agnes. And today, Girl Guiding continues as a very successful but separate girl-only organisation. And incidentally, just to demonstrate, the Wolf Patrol were not the only early Girl Scouts. This is the Red Rose Patrol from Poole in Dorset on England's south coast. As for Freemasonry, the United Grand Lodge of England and all of the Grand Lodges it recognises around the world is male only. However, there are women-only Grand Lodges which practice the same form of Freemasonry and which are growing in popularity. My last difference is that between growth and decline. All membership organisations go through cycles of peaks and troughs in membership. Freemasonry here in the United Kingdom has had a declining membership for over 40 years. Scouting too has in the past experienced the same. In the 1960s, Scouting in the United Kingdom made major changes to its organisation and programme, and that was just before I joined. As a result of those changes, at the age of 61, I am too young to have ever been called a Boy Scout. The organisation I joined here in England was just called Scouts. In the 1990s, UK Scouting was again in decline. We were losing 10,000 members every year, and we knew that we had to do something. So we underwent a complete review of all aspects of Scouting. Thankfully, we retained our core, our fundamental purpose and values, unaltered. And as a result of the changes we made to our organisation, we have been growing ever since we implemented those changes 18 years ago in 2003. We have more young people now than ever, and we have twice as many members in the core teenage years than we had 10 years ago. And this growth is not due to admitting girls, which we had done a decade beforehand and which now comprise around a quarter of UK Scouting's youth members. Later in this lecture, I will explain something of the changes that UK Scouting made and how Freemasonry could well learn from Scouting's experiences. Before then, I'd like to examine Robert Baden-Powell's relationship with Freemasonry and to address one of those big questions. And that big question, of course, is, was Baden-Powell, the founder of Scouting, a Freemason? And did he perhaps get his inspiration from Freemasonry? Well, if you examine his CV, his curriculum vitae or resume, it becomes clear that not only would he have made an excellent candidate, but with his interests, he would have found Freemasonry highly enjoyable. So I can confirm that Robert Baden-Powell was not a Freemason. No record exists of him being initiated in or attending any meeting of any lodge under the English, Scottish, or Irish constitutions in the United Kingdom, India, or South Africa. And these are the countries in which he served as an army officer. No one has come forward with any documentary evidence of his membership. His staff and his family have all confirmed that he was not a member, and I know members of his family very well. So if Robert Baden-Powell was not a Freemason, what did he think of it? From original research and examination of primary sources, I have uncovered a trail of contacts that Baden-Powell had with Freemasonry, and I believe I can answer that question. The trail starts back in Mafeking in South Africa during the siege. At its start on the 12th of October, 1899, Baden-Powell, the commanding officer in the town, declared martial law and stopped all of the town's organizations from meeting, including its own Masonic lodge, Austral Lodge, number 2534, under the English Constitution. The lodge remained closed for some months until February 1900, when BP gave permission for it to meet. He even offered to design a commemorative jewel or medal for the occasion. Incidentally, the picture here that you can see depicts those attending that very first meeting under siege conditions. And the treasurer, Brother Edward Ross, reported that during the time the lodge was working, a volley of Mauser bullets fired into the town. Baden-Powell was also close friends with a number of Freemasons. One of the best known was Rudyard Kipling. They first met at around the time that Kipling was initiated into Hope and Perseverance Lodge, number 782 in Lahore, in what is now Pakistan. They remained close until Kipling's death in 1936. Kipling helped BP form the first younger section in Scouting, the Wolf Cubs, and his Jungle Book stories provided the allegorical basis for the section. Note how wolf cubs used allegory to convey its meaning, just as Freemasonry does in its ritual. A rather more senior Freemason was another of Baden-Powell's close friends. BP first met His Royal Highness, the Duke of Connaught and Strathearn, again in India, in the 1880s, when, as adjutant to the 13th Hussars Regiment, BP was assigned to look after the Duke. He performed his task with some considerable enthusiasm. Later in 1906, by which time the Duke was both United Grand Lodge's Grand Master and Britain's Inspector General of the Forces, and BP was Inspector General of the Cavalry, they toured South Africa together. On the 1st of February, they were both in Mafeking. After the Duke had visited Austral Lodge, he and BP dined together. And although BP did not record the conversation in his diaries, it's clear from what he did write that they discussed Freemasonry and the Lodge. The Duke was BP's choice to be the first president of the UK's then Boy Scouts Association. And such was their friendship that BP named his son after him, his first name being Arthur, although he was always known as Peter, from the play Peter Pan. Very strong evidence of BP's views of Freemasonry come from a letter sent to all English lodges following meetings that BP had with United Grand Lodge's then Grand Secretary, Philip Colville Smith. It was 1921, exactly 100 years ago, not long after the Great War and very shortly after the first World Scout Jamboree. Scouting needed funds. In his letter, Baden-Powell acknowledges the number of parallels between Scouting and Freemasonry. And he says, and I quote, "Our principles are closely allied with those of the Freemason, being those of brotherhood and service." BP clearly thought well of Freemasonry, he just never joined. Some years later, whilst he was in Melbourne, Australia, Baden-Powell visited the Masonic Hall where the world's first Scout Lodge, Baden-Powell Lodge number 488, was based. He signed the Lodge's Bible with an inscription that acknowledged the Lodge's good work. So he must have thought very well of us. Incidentally, the Lodge had been founded in 1929 by BP's later deputy and his successor as Chief Scout, Lord Somers, who at the time was Governor General of Victoria and its Grand Master. And Lord Somers had gained BP's express permission to name the Lodge after Baden-Powell. Now, many people assumed that Baden-Powell was a Freemason. Among the congratulatory letters he received after Mafeking was relieved were two from Masonic authorities. This one, from the District Grand Secretary of South Africa Western Division, can be paraphrased as follows. "Dear Colonel Baden-Powell, we, the Freemasons of Cape Town, wish to congratulate you on the gallant job you did in beating those pesky Boers and restoring pride in the British Empire. We feel sure that you must be a Freemason, and so we wish to invite you to a lodge meeting the next time you're in town so that we may thank you personally. If, however, our information is incorrect and you're not a member of the craft, we still think you did a pretty good job." So, if Baden-Powell thought so well of Freemasonry, why did he not become a Freemason? Now, he often referred to his two lives. The first was as a very successful army officer, and the second was as Chief Scout of the World. We know from correspondence that he had many opportunities to join Freemasonry in his latter life, but he declined as Chief Scout because he feared that becoming a Freemason would cause a rift with the Roman Catholic Scouts. For me, this shows his sensitivity to his own membership and his concern to act in the best interests of his own organisation. What we don't know is why he didn't join the craft during his first life as an army officer. Personally, I believe it was for family reasons, but I will expand on this elsewhere. For now, I will just say that only one of his many accomplished brothers ever became a Freemason, and that was only around the time of their mother's death. However, the present Lord Baden-Powell, the grandson of BP, is a Freemason. Michael, 4th Baron Baden-Powell, is a past master of Baden-Powell Lodge in Victoria and a past Grand Officer of the Grand Lodge of Victoria in Australia. In 2014, I proposed Michael as a joining member of the Lodge of Unity, Peace and Concord, number 316, here in the United Kingdom, in England. This is the installed Masters Lodge of the Kindred Lodges Association. So for the first time, we can say that a descendant of Robert Baden-Powell and the holder of BP's titles at that is a Freemason, and an English one. Now, if Baden-Powell was not a Freemason, if the first Lord Baden-Powell was not a Freemason, is it possible that those Freemasons who worked with him in the pioneering days of Scouting could have inspired the parallels between the two organizations? So in this section, I'm going to examine the part played by Masonic Scouters, and I'm also going to look at the Kindred Lodges Association, a group of lodges with a shared interest in youth work. Baden-Powell did not found Scouting on his own. Many others inspired, encouraged, and indeed supported him. Is it possible that some of these influenced the building of the parallels with Freemasonry? Now, I've researched the key people who worked with BP in the early embryonic years of Scouting, and I list the key ones here. And it should be of no surprise that many were Freemasons. However, when I compare these two lists, what strikes me is that those who were Freemasons, those on the left, tend to be what we would today call ambassadors. They didn't roll up their sleeves and work at the sharp end. The people who camped with BP, toured with him, ran his office and were generally by his side, for the most part, fall into the second list. They were not Freemasons. My conclusion is that Freemasons were not responsible for creating these parallels. There is little or no Masonic DNA in Scouting as such. So these parallels must be explained by deeper roots, going back to earlier times. And we know, for example, that BP's social conscience was developed at a very young age, and that he had a fascination with orders of knighthood and chivalric codes. So whatever the origins of the parallels, they do exist, and many Freemasons have become Scouts. Indeed, as we say, once a Scout, always a Scout. Now, while Scouting was not formed by Freemasons, it's clear that many Scouts have gone on to become Freemasons. One of the most well-known is Ralph Reeder, the Broadway producer and founder of the game shows. He was active in 2 Scouting lodges, and I was honoured to be the founding master of a lodge named after him. Years later, Jock Barr was responsible for re-energising the United Kingdom's Venture Scout section. That is the section that was for 16 to 20-year-olds. We no longer have that section. We've changed the age ranges and the names of our sections since then. But Jock became a Freemason in the United Kingdom's Scout Headquarters Lodge. One who played a part in my becoming a Freemason was Kim Gale. He was the first person to be initiated in my mother lodge. He was the head of Scouting in my local county, Derbyshire, and he was a close personal friend as well as a very well-known Scout internationally in his own day. Now, inevitably, Masonic Scouters grouped together to form Scouting lodges. So it wasn't long before the lodges themselves formed into a lodge association. The Kindred Lodges Association, or KLA, comprises around 40 craft lodges in England, together with some lodges overseas and some Royal Arch chapters and Mark lodges. These are, for those of you who are not Freemasons, these are other branches of Freemasonry. And most of these lodges are connected with Scouting, although a few of them are linked to the Boys Brigade and one to the cadet services. We don't have a de Molay organisation in the United Kingdom. De Molay is closely connected to Freemasonry in the United States of America and in Masonic organisations that have particularly close arrangements with those grand lodges. But it isn't as widespread around the world as Scouting. Hence the Kindred Lodges Association and the relationship in my association between Scouting and Freemasonry. So this brings me then to the origins of, from the origins of Scouting right up to the present day. What is the relationship between Scouting and Freemasonry now in the 21st century? Well, I believe I've established that the two organisations do have a shared purpose, they have the same values, and indeed they have a good number of members in common. And as membership organisations, they also face the same challenges in the 21st century. Those challenges are concerned with how we function as organisations, rather than our values or our deeper meaning. So, for example, what does the public understand us to be? How do we compete for members' time and energy when they have so many other things they could be doing with their time? How do we attract, introduce and retain new members? And then how do we communicate with them, support them and encourage good practice? How do we organise ourselves to provide this support? And what do we then do when our membership units, whether they be Scout groups or Masonic lodges, become unviable? How do we encourage them to evolve, change, move, or even to close? Scouting in the United Kingdom has already and continues to address these issues. Back in the 1990s, when it was in decline, it undertook a root and branch review of everything. Nothing was off limits. Everything was challenged, examined, tested. And we consulted all of our members as well as external interested parties. The results confirmed that the core meaning of Scouting, its fundamental values and principles, must continue unaltered. But everything else, the organisational parts, clearly needed modernisation. So we revitalised the youth programme, as a result of which Scouting has grown. In fact, young people think of Scouting here as being cool, and more young people are seeking to join. We changed the offer for adults too. We introduced better recruitment and leadership training processes. We changed the culture of local and central support so that Scouting now works to meet the needs of those delivering Scouting in local Scout groups. So today, here in the UK, the Scouts is a modern and relevant organisation. It has a vibrant public image. It is also a highly respected and innovative leader in the UK charity and volunteer sector. Now, Freemasonry has supported Scouts in its change process. In 2008, one of our central charities, what was then called the Grand Charity, made a major grant to the UK Scout Association to fund its programme to open new Scout groups and grow local provision. In 2015, another central charity, the Royal Masonic Trust for Girls and Boys, followed this with a further grant targeted at starting Scouting in the 200 most deprived communities in England and Wales. This relationship is two-way. Scouting has also supported Freemasonry. One recent example, which came about since I started giving this lecture, is how Scouting inspired the Members' Pathway. The Members' Pathway is a toolkit for lodges. It provides them with the practical guidance and tools to attract, introduce, and retain new members into Freemasonry. Now, I was inspired to develop the Members' Pathway by Scouting's Adults in Scouting model. This brings together into one complete package the means to recruit, induct, train, and manage Scouting's adult volunteers. The Kindred Lodges Association has played its part in developing this relationship. It has engaged with Scouting and Masonic authorities at all levels to encourage collaboration and the sharing of ideas and experiences. It has also supported many Scouting projects, especially in connection with Scouting's heritage. I act as the Kindred Lodges Association's liaison with both the United Kingdom Scout Association and the United Grand Lodge of England. Locally, there have been many other examples of collaboration. This scene is very familiar to English Freemasons. It's a meeting in the Grand Temple at Freemasons Hall in London. But if you look closely, you will see that the people lined in the north and south of what we call the squared pavement are not Freemasons. They are in fact Scouts. This is a meeting of the Metropolitan Grand Lodge of London, and the brethren are receiving a presentation from Explorer Scouts in London. Explorer Scouts are the current 14 to 18 age range. Further outside of London, in the province of Worcestershire, the Scout Lodge there, Pathfinder Lodge, works in partnership with others to provide the administrative backup for the On Away Scout and Guide Group. This is an innovative scheme that provides scouting and guiding to inpatients of the Birmingham Children's Hospital. The Lodge Secretary is also the group secretary, the Scout Group Secretary. The Lodge Treasurer is also the Scout Group Treasurer, and the Master of the Lodge chairs the Group Executive and Trustees. Overseas, relations between the two organisations are also developing. That very first Scouting Lodge, Baden-Powell Lodge in Melbourne, Victoria, has an annual event for Rover Scouts, at which it presents an award for community service. This copy of their local newsletter shows the Grand Master of Victoria in his full dress Masonic regalia, which is here worn over his Scout uniform. In the United States of America, there are not so many Scout lodges as such, but there is the National Association of Masonic Scouters, which is a membership body for individual Freemasons rather than lodges. I'm proud that they have accepted me as an associate member. The Boy Scouts of America also has the Daniel Carter Beard Masonic Scouter Award, a recognized scouting award for adults within its Community Organization Award category. It's supported by a majority of Grand Lodges in the United States. Sadly, we don't have such an award in the United Kingdom, and as far as I know, only one Freemason outside of the United States, I'll start again. As far as I know, only one Freemason outside of the United States of America has been granted this award, and that was the then Michael Baden-Powell, the 4th Baron Baden-Powell and the grandson of Lord Baden-Powell. There are a growing number of other collaborations around the world, and in a follow-up to this lecture, I hope to tell their story. And who knows, maybe that story will feature Scouting and Freemasonry in the Philippines. So this brings me to the present day and to the future. What is my vision for the future relationship of the two organisations? And what are the opportunities for both of them? Well, since 2008, I've been meeting regularly with the chief executives of both organisations here in my country, in the United Kingdom. The three of us have lunch together around twice a year. The current chief executive of the UK Scout Association, Matt Hyde, appreciates the valuable support that Freemasonry has given to Scouting, and he wants us to work together in the future. The Grand Secretary and Chief Executive of United Grand Lodge of England, Dr. David Staples, recognises that Scouting and Freemasonry are built on the same values, and he fully supports the sharing of our challenges, ideas, and experiences. Now, building this relationship has support, therefore, from the highest level of both organisations. But what does it mean in practice? How can we help each other? Well, first of all, I would encourage all Scouts and Freemasons to work at building local relationships. I've written a document which is available on my website to help guide you through such a process. It's called Creating Local Connections. The real opportunity is to share experiences of running a membership organisation, be it at lodge, regional or national levels, as well as ideas for the future. And it's amazing how useful an external perspective can be. Then we have the incredible resource of the practical and professional skills that we Freemasons have developed and which could be of real benefit to Scouting, whether it be as auditors or account examiners, electricians, mechanics, lawyers, investment advisors, photographers. The list is endless. And of course, our Masonic buildings can be great community resources. Scouting would love to have access to these for awards nights, committee meetings and training courses, if not for our section meetings with their rough and tumble and ball games. Most importantly, if we are open to learn from each other, we will find many ways in which we can help each other. So this brings me to what salespeople would call the ask or call to action, and what marketing people would call my vision. What if the regional heads of both organizations met each other regularly to share ideas and experiences? What if every scout group, which started as a result from a financial grant from a Masonic charity, was contacted by a local lodge to offer assistance, not financially, but practical support? And what if every Freemason, whoever made the Scout promise, gave just one evening a year of their time and skills to local scouting? So to summarize my lecture, I think I've established, first of all, that there are both traditional and contemporary parallels between scouting and Freemasonry. And while some Freemasons had a role in the early days of scouting, scouting was certainly not born out of Freemasonry or Masonic thinking. However, many of today's Freemasons were once scouts, and Freemasonry could well be very attractive to today's scouts if they know about us. Most importantly, however, I believe that scouting and Freemasonry can only benefit from a current understanding of what each organization is today, not yesterday, and from building local collaborative relationships. Now, as I mentioned, it is customary for Prestonian lecturers to produce a booklet form of the lecture to sell in aid of their chosen charities. So for those of you who want to know more, you can buy the book associated with my lecture. This goes into considerable more detail than the oral lecture, and it is available from my website. All proceeds are split equally between my two charities. And you can also use my website to contact me if you want more information. Talking about my charities, the two that I've selected to be supported by the lectureship are, first of all, the Scout Association's, the UK Scout Association's Heritage Fund. This exists to educate people about Scouting and its history. And being the founder of Scouting Worldwide, we have here in the UK a particular responsibility to preserve our heritage and to safeguard memorabilia for the future, for future generations, and to use that to educate young people. So we're hoping and working to establish and build the United Kingdom's National Museum of Scouting, and my fund here is helping in that endeavour. The second charity that I support is the Masonic Charitable Foundation, which helps people build better lives and supports Freemasons and their families in need, as well as other charitable causes in our communities, and which is very active in disaster relief worldwide. Now, if you wanted to do even more to support Scouting, and especially Gilwell Park, which is the spiritual home of the worldwide Scout movement, you may be interested in becoming a Gilwell Fellow. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail about this here, but if you're interested in finding out about this scheme, it's an international scheme, please do contact me directly for more details. You can contact me through my website. Finally, may I thank you for your interest in this subject, for inviting me to be your first international speaker, to all of you for attending this lecture, but most importantly, for what you're going to do in the future to help build the relationship between Scouting and Freemasonry. So now I'm going to hand back right now to Teddy, who's going to introduce our panel speakers, and after which there'll be an opportunity for your questions, which we would ask you to put into the chat area so that we can manage them from there. And if you could keep them succinct, that would be very helpful for us. And no doubt, inevitably, we'll have an opportunity to discuss some of those aspects. So back to you, Teddy, and thank you very much indeed, Scouts and Freemasons.
Thank you, Tony. Brother Ozone, are we on the panel now?
Yes, we are now going into the panel discussion, and the reactors will be introduced by Press Teddy, and Press Teddy will also ask our panel moderator. So I give you the floor, Press Teddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Director General Ozone. I'm very fortunate that we have distinguished and authoritative representatives from both sides in responding to Tony's very impressive presentation, I might add.
Teddy, before, if I may interrupt, we have somebody who we can't seem to be able to mute, who's breaking through. And I think that's quiet now. Okay.
Thank you, Tony. For our first reactor, I have to highlight that for representing the Boy Scouts of the Philippines in reacting to Tony's speech, we have none other than their incumbent president, former Governor and Tourism Secretary Obet Pagdananan is my fellow Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Manila. And if there are 3 words that I can use to describe him, it is that he is a true Renaissance man. He has been a consistent scholar ever since he got his Bachelor of Chemical Engineering summa cum laude in 1968 from the Manuel L. Quezon University. He also has an MBA from De La Salle University in 1977 and a Bachelor of Laws in MLQU from 1990. In 1995, he was conferred a doctorate in educational management by the Bulacan State University. Governor Obet has had extensive experience in the private sector, and I mean the business, academe, civil society, and as you now know, government service. He was a senior executive for quite some time at Unilever and a professional lecturer in chemical engineering and MBA subjects before he joined the government in 1986. Governor Obet has been recognized as a most outstanding public servant and has received numerous awards and recognitions, including Most Outstanding Alumnus Awards from his alma maters, Lifetime Achievement Award, the highest award that the Boy Scouts of the Philippines can give, and one of our highest national awards, the Legion of Honor, granted to him by President Cory Aquino for his role in fighting coup attempts during her term. Governor Obet is a pioneer and one of our leading thought leaders in the promotion of and development of local autonomy in the public sector. He has been president of the League of Provinces and was the founding chair of the League of Leagues of Local Government Unit, now known as the Union of Local Authorities in the Philippines, ULAP. Governor Obet has continued his advocacy also in the strengthening of cooperatives, which he started when he was appointed presidential advisor on cooperative and chairman later of the Cooperative Development Authority, an agency specifically mandated to be created by our 1987 Constitution. Later on, he subsequently served as Secretary of the Department of Agrarian Reform, where he encouraged agrarian reform beneficiaries to form cooperatives under the Agrarian Reform Community Strategy. Subsequently, he had the second cabinet post as Tourism Secretary. Governor Obet initiated the opening of our country's first tourism office in China and signed the Memorandum of Agreement for Tourism Cooperation between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China in September 2004. He was the chairman of the Philippine Southeast Asian Games Organizing Committee, which hosted, as you all know, the memorable 23rd Southeast Asian Games and won the overall championship for our country, which won the overall championship for our country for the first time. He is also the chairman and president of the Philip PITC and PITC Pharma and has spearheaded the quest to improve access to quality and affordable medicines for Filipino people. Ladies and gentlemen and fellow officers and members of the Masonic Society for Nationhood, most importantly in our context, Scouting has always been close to President Obet's heart. He joined Scouting at the age of 10 in Kalumpit Elementary School and participated as a patrol leader in the 10th World Jamboree in July 1959 at Mount Makiling. He subsequently became the Philippine contingent head to the 24th World Jamboree in West Virginia in July 2019. Altogether, Governor Obet has been in scouting for close to 55 years and is in his 4th term as national president of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. To provide the reaction on the part of the Boy Scouts to Tony Harvey's lecture today, Governor Obet.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the very generous introduction to the Mabini Society for Nationhood and fellow Rotarian, Attorney Teddy Calao. I think we're fast becoming members of the Mutual Admiration Society. President Teddy, let me, before going any further, acknowledge our distinguished fellowship presenter, Estonian lecturer, fellow scout Tony Harvey. Thank you very much. Let's give you a big round of applause. I salute you, Tony, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me also greet the Vice Chairman, also past Grand Master of Philippine Freemasons, a dear colleague and a fellow scout. I was happy to know that you were also together with me in the 10th World Jamboree. Our past Grand Master, fellow public servant, Boy Anyag, Pacifico Boy Anyag, the Grand Master of the Order of Demole, Grand Master Django Durano, the other distinguished officers of the Mabini Society for Nationhood, including our MC, Sir Rodolfo Asanza, and everybody else. To all of you, my dear friends, good evening. I'd like to begin by thanking President Teddy for inviting me here. I consider it a signal honor and privilege. After all, it's not every day that you get to meet and listen to a fellow scout who's been there for more than 50 years, looking very good in his uniform. Congratulations again, Scout Tony.
Thank you.
Listen to that wonderful lecture. It's made me understand even more the relationship between scouting and Freemasonry. As Tony highlighted, the two organizations, Scouting and Freemasonry, are two parallel organizations with similar core values and principles, mission and objectives. And he highlighted the main similarities between the two and some differences later on. But what binds them together, in my view, is a strong desire to develop our youth to become outstanding leaders, responsible citizens of our country and all over the world. And indeed, there was a long list that he mentioned about personal faith and belief, moral self-development. That's what leadership development is all about. And today, the need for such leaders cannot be overemphasized all over the world, particularly in the Philippines, in my view. Today is the birthday, 160th birthday of our national hero, Tony Jose Rizal, who was a foremost Mason, Freemason during his time. Jose Rizal, our national hero. 1 week ago, we celebrated our 123rd independence anniversary. And indeed, if we look at ourselves today, one question that comes out is, are we really truly independent today? Let me tackle that a little bit later and see how we can work together to make that independence thing even more meaningful for all of us and our people. Scouting has been in the Philippines for more than 106 years, but not before the birth of Freemasonry in our country. In fact, the Philippine Freemasons played a major role in the birth of Philippine Scouting. It was Edwin E. Elser, then president of the Rotary Club of Manila, who was Grand Master of Philippine Masons, Freemasons in the Philippine Islands in 1921, who petitioned the Boy Scouts of America in 1922 for the establishment of Boy Scout Council in the Philippines as part of the Boy Scouts of America. We were then a Commonwealth of America. In 1923, that came into being. And then in 1936, October 31, 1936 to be precise, a law was passed and it was signed into law by another outstanding Mason. In fact, the first Grand Mason, Filipino Grand Mason in Philippine Freemason Society. And he was then the president of the Philippines, Manuel Luis Quezon. Our founding fathers in Boy Scouts of the Philippines also were 7. And out of 7, 4 were Freemasons. The first was Manuel Camus, who was a lawyer, judge, and senator, who was a Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines in 1934. Then there was General Vicente Lim, the first Filipino graduate of the U.S. Military Academy and war hero. There was also Arsenio Luz, who actively worked for the Philippine independence at that time, who really put together a lot of efforts to support Scouting in the Philippines. And the fourth Freemason was Jorge Vargas, a lawyer, executive secretary to MLQU, President Quezon, and the first Filipino member of the International Olympic Committee. Since then, many active leaders of Philippine Freemasonry, including my immediate predecessor as National President of Boy Scouts of the Philippines, was a National President and also a Freemason, Secretary Wendell Avisado of Budget and Management. And then, of course, there's my old colleague, mentioned by Vice Chairman Anyag, who was a very dear colleague of mine, Francisco Anyag Jr., who was my vice governor when I was governor of our province, and also a colleague in Rotary, who was for the longest time a member of the National Executive Board. I can go on and on. There's quite a number of them, active and very supportive of Scouting even today. And so that gives you an idea about how close Freemasonry and Scouting in the Philippines has been through the years. I can say that Scouting would probably have come about were it not for the initiative and support of the Freemasons at that time. They even raised funds to support Scouting when it was in its incipient beginning years. Having said all that, Scouting has also been in the Philippines facing a lot of challenges, especially with the pandemic. During my first term in 1996 as president of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, we had 3.2 million members. And then, just like what Tony said earlier on, Scouting, like Freemasonry, has gone through cycles of ups and downs. Last year, in 2019, when I was re-elected as president of Boy Scouts of the Philippines again, we were able to raise the membership to like 2,825,000. But then pandemic struck. And so we were down to 620,000. By the end of last year, we were up to 670,000. It dropped by 76% of our membership, which really brought us to a lot of difficulties. As it is now, we continue to establish linkages with different groups and undertake a lot of projects. For instance, we had these flagship projects. One is tree planting and vegetable gardening. This will protect the environment. And we had tied up with the Department of Agriculture to plant as many trees and vegetables in the neighborhood and urban and rural settings. We also have tied up with the Philippine Public Safety College, which is the school operating the school colleges for training police officers and officers, fire marshals. And there we're focusing on training them about volunteerism, patriotism, and leadership. We also have this tie-up with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in protecting the environment. And MWSS is moved this Metropolitan Waterworks and sewerage system to plant 1 million trees this year in their watershed. So all these partnerships are being brought about. And I'm really so happy that today we are coordinating with each other. So I'm so happy. I think the organization of the movement of the Mobility Society for Nationhood is both timely and very relevant. And having listened to Tony, Scout Tony, fellow Scout Tony, I think, but even more encouraged, because as we see these parallel organizations move towards a goal, I believe that the time has come when we have to establish links. As you know, in geometry, parallel lines in the same plane will never intersect, they'll never meet. But if they have the same direction, same objectives, same principles and core values, I believe that what we need is linkages, so they can work together, promote synergy, and be more effective in coordinating with others and attaining the common objectives. That's how I see this Mabini Society for Nationhood, and perhaps with all the other, including Rotary, because many of us here are also Rotarians. But let's focus there in this scouting and Freemasonry. Perhaps we'll be able to provide that link that will really enable us to bring together a society that we can all be proud of. I mentioned that in 1959, the Philippines hosted the World Jamboree, and we were so lucky to have attended that. You know, the Philippines was actually, Tony, the first country outside of Europe and Canada that hosted a World Jamboree, ahead of everybody else in Japan, in Asia. Even America hosted the World Jamboree only 8 years later in Idaho in 1967. And at that time, the Philippines was among the most progressive country in Asia, second to Japan, arguably, and the first and most progressive among the Southeast Asian countries. Today, sad to say, 1 out of every 5 Filipinos lives in poverty, and we have been overtaken socioeconomically by 4 of these countries that used to be behind us. Well, I'm not proud to say that, but I'm just saying that because I believe that by working together, we can help develop leaders of today who will be effective leaders even more tomorrow, because it's the leadership that really creates a nation. Because we Filipinos are really very good. I think what we have to do is develop young leaders today who will be even better than us. And if we are able to do that, then I think eventually we'll see a socially economic, equitably progressive country with empowered people, and a country that we can all be proud of. So on that note, let me thank you very much for inviting me again. Thank you, Tony, for that wonderful lecture. And I look forward to really working with you so that together we can establish that linkage so that these 2 parallel organizations can work for a common goal for our people and our 2 organizations. Mabuhay ang Scouting, mabuhay ang Freemasonry. Maraming salamat po. God bless us all.
Let's all give a hand to Governor Obet. Thank you so much, Governor Obet. And now, from as the representatives of the Freemasons, well, unfortunately, we are not able to present the Grand Master because he's currently indisposed just today. But we are fortunate to have someone who is just as relevant, and I think quite special today, because he heads the youth arm for males here in the country. Since the time, he has always been a very strong leader in the appendant bodies that constitute our various youth arms. Since becoming a pioneering member of the Pagadian City chapter of the Order of Demolay in 1985, he became subsequently its past master counselor, and subsequently also was past president of the Dr. Filamon Panares Demolay Alumni Chapter when he moved up to the Demolay Alumni. In the Demolay Alumni Association of the Philippines, he was vice president for Northern and Western Mindanao in 2005, and now in the Supreme Council of the Order of Demolay, our youth chapter for males. He has served as Deputy Grand Master, Grand Senior Counselor, and Executive Officer for Region 9A. For his exemplary performance and service to that fraternity, okay, he was awarded the degrees of Chevalier and Legion of Honor, which as a land fellow, I can say are the highest awards sought after by members of that order. As a Freemason, he joined the Iliana Masonic Lodge 274 in 1996 and became its worshipful master in 2001. Our panelist representing the Freemasons today also became a Grand Lodge Inspector, a District Grand Lecturer, and a Deputy District Grand Master. He is also very active in the Shriners, being a leader in Aguila Shriner International, where he was the former president of the Pagadian Shrine Club and the Mindanao Shrine Club. Our panelist is a former city councilor of Pagadian City and also served at the barangay and department levels, particularly before the Department of Agrarian Reform. He has also had this extensive experience in the private sector as with Marsman Pharmaceutical Company. Our panelist, earned a master's degree in governance and development from Ateneo Zamboanga and is married to Maria Teresa, who is a member of another affiliate body, the Order of the Eastern Star in Pagadian City. They have produced 3 sons who are all Demolays: Aljon, Carlos, and Andre. Ladies and gentlemen, members and officers of the Mabini Society for Nationhood, it is indeed my privilege to present, as representing not just the Demolays but the Masons today, the centennial Grand Master of the Supreme Council of the Order of Demolay in the Republic of the Philippines, the Honorable Adriano Django Durano III. Grandmaster Django, floor is yours.
Thank you, very worshipful Teddy Calo, our MSN chairman and president. And also I would like to acknowledge our worshipful brother Tony Harvey, our Presbyterian lecturer of the United Grand Lodge of England. And also we have the vice chairman of MSN, Most Worshipful Pacifico Anyag, my idol in the movement, Demolay movement, because he is deputy grandmaster then. And also we acknowledge also our president and the former governor of Laguna. Laguna ba yung
Bulacan.
Bulacan. Former
Yeah,
governor of Bulacan and the
kababayan ni
president of the Boy Scout of the Philippines, Honorable Roberto Obet Pandanganan, sir. And also, of course, my fellow member of the Supreme Council, we have our past Grandmaster of the Supreme Council Order of Demolay. We have Honorable Edison Abelia. And to all, and also we have our jurisdictional deputy grandmaster for Luzon, Erickson Atanasio, and to all members of this MSN or the Mabini Society for Nationhood. So once again, good evening to each and everyone. I am truly honored to be invited to speak in behalf of our Grandmaster, Rolino Paulino. Despite the short notice, I hope I would be able to do justice in filling in his shoes, even as a fraction of the wisdom that he could have imparted. The talk that we all have listened to was indeed very enlightening, and I thank the good, worshipful Tony Harvey of the United Grand Lodge of England for his thought-provoking lecture, as well as further reassuring us that I have entered the right organization. My organization is before my reaction is I am the Grandmaster of the Supreme Council Order of Demolay. The youth organization is under the umbrella of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines, which sponsored, the Freemasonry sponsored this youth organization. And we have founded, the organization founded in March 18, 1919 in Kansas, Missouri. So we already have our 100 years centennial celebration last March 2019. And our organization is also the second, the largest organization next to Boy Scout because we have, in Brazil, we have 1,000 chapters. In the Philippines, we have 103 chapters. And in the United States, we have all over in the States, we have, I think, 60 or 100 chapters. And we have chapters in all 27 countries. Germany, Canada, Australia, and other 27 countries. So, same as the Boy Scout teaches trainings through special skills, and our organization teaches young men to become better sons, good citizens, good sonship, citizens, and even leaders in our communities, in our organization, as well as in our communities. So we are very thankful to Freemasonry, who sponsored this very beautiful organization of ours, no? Because without the Freemasonry, Demole would not exist, no? So I'm now giving my reactions that the Freemasonry and Scouting truly have many parallels in terms of the values they possess, the sex of the memberships in organizations, and many more. At its core, Scouting teaches responsible citizenship, character development, educational programs, and self-reliance through participation in a wide range of outdoor activities. Though Masonry does not use the exact same words, Masonry summarizes its objectives with the phrase, making good men better. And how do we make good men better? By instilling in them the knowledge and especially values and principles that emphasize a man placed vis-a-vis society or his community. Scouting also seems to follow the same principles of Masonry, in which most of its principles and teachings are also written in trees.
Yes.
Boy Scout promised to do three things.
Yes.
To do my duty to God, country, and obey the Scout law. 3. To help other people at all times. To keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. So 3. Similarly, Masonry has the 3 degrees: entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason. 3 great lights: the Bible, the square, and the compasses. 3 main officers also: the junior warden, the senior warden, and the worshipful masters, among other examples. There are just a few many similarities between the two organizations. Some Masonic scholars would even go as far as claiming that Robert Baden-Powell took inspirations from the teachings of Brother Rudyard Kipling, the English journalist, poet, and novelist. Scout law is trustworthy, loyal, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Some of these virtues are also reflective of the pledges we have made in the 3 degrees. Though more clearly defined and qualified, there are very strong parallels between Scouting and Masonry that some would even argue that there is nothing in the Scout law and promise cannot be seen in the craft. Boy Scouts have all incorporated these traits and virtues in the way they live, much like how many Masons also incorporate the values of brotherly love, justice, and truth. However, we also have some difference. The age being the most obvious. Scouting is primarily for young boys, but Masonry only accept within its ranks men whom we would say have already made necessary provisions for their family in case the untowards happen. In short, Masonry is for men who have jobs, savings, and investments for their families, which Scouts at their age do not yet think about. The emphasis of Scouting is civic duty. In fact, their highest rank, the Eagle Scout, is predicated on the completion of a service project for one of the communities in which the Scout circulates. Although it is also an ideal in Masonry, the extension of services and assistance in the community. This is not a free requisite to one's journey of the Oriental chair. However, a Mason's worthiness to lead the lodge is dependent on his character, his values, his how the teachings of Masonry has molded him to become even better. As we say in Masonry, we build good men to become better, even better, if not the best. Another difference between Scouting and Masonry is the skills training undergone by Scouts. Scouts train in skills that are useful in the great outdoors, especially in camping. Masonry train themselves with the virtues of temperance, circumspections, brotherly love, truth and justice, among others. Though I do not have the intentions of disparaging the craft and the practice of Masonry in the country, Masons prefer holding their fellowship within the confines of the halls under the protections of the roof, while Scouts hold fellowships in open-air venues, in the fields with their tents as their only protection from the elements. Scouting and Masonry have many parallels. The former is for boys and young men predicated on survival skills trainings and values formations. The later, Masonry, is for adult men, though not anymore a secret organization, but still an organization with secrets. However, our guest speaker has also noted the different distinguishing characteristics evident between the two organizations, where all Scouting accepts all people regardless of background and walk of life and works toward teachings these people to become good citizens, while Freemasonry focused on making good men better. Also, Scouting is open to girls, while Freemasonry is limited to adult established men. Regardless of these differences, both Scouting and Freemasonry exist with the great goal of creating a better community for all the people through the personal development of each individual person or member. In Freemasonry, we say we good men better, which more or less coincides with the goals of Scouting to encourage its members to be service to the community and to the country. Both Scouting and Freemasonry live with the principles of brotherhood and service through its shared purpose, shared values, and shared challenges. So that is my thoughts of this forum. And I would like to thank the MSN President, very worshipful Teodoro Cala, for inviting me, and also our Vice Chairman, most worshipful Anyag, and the members of this MSN, and to our guest speaker, who also enlightened me between the two Scouting and Freemasonry. This is the first time I heard the parallels between these two organizations. So thank you, and to everyone, have a pleasant day to all of us. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you, Grandmaster Django. And
Sure.
now we come to the point where we'll have a short panel because I'd like to tease out further not just the reactions but some of the content from Tony Harvey's speech. Tony, my first question is to you. Given the reactions of our speakers, I noted towards the end what I was most excited about in your presentation was your highlighting that both organizations have a lot of promise in working and collaborating together, going towards the future. Unfortunately, our Grandmaster is not present tonight, but our incumbent Grandmaster, Most Worshipful Roland, is an example of this. He actually, when he was Worshipful Master, founded the Boy Scout troop in his own city, Olongapo City, through his being Master of Lincoln Lodge. I'd like to know, and now that you've noted the reactions of our speakers, in your 5 decades in these organizations, if you have 2 or 3 specific tips that will help promote collaboration between these organizations, what would those be?
What an excellent question. Teddy, may I first of all thank your 2 reactors. First of all, Governor Obeah and Most Worshipful Django, thank you so much for the comments that you've made in response to my lecture. Of course, you didn't have the advantage of knowing in advance what I was going to say. So I pay tribute to you for your response, which in both cases, you have clearly and fully understood not only the historic parallels, but also the great opportunities that these 2 wonderful organizations create for our society, for Philippine society and societies around the world. My emphasis, and I think you've both acknowledged this too, is what we do in the future. I'm an historian, but I use history to help point the way to the future so that we can learn from the past and lead our way forward. So what in answering Teddy's question, my first of all real hope is that the leaders of the 2 organizations in any audience, and here today in the Philippines, my hope is that the leaders of the 2 organizations get to know each other, meet each other, discuss with each other, share their experiences, share their challenges, and be open to learn from each other. Because there is so much that a leader, and I'm sure that you would acknowledge this, there is so much the leader of one organization can gain simply by sharing those issues with leaders in others. Being a leader is a very lonely position, and having people in similar positions in other organizations with whom you can have discussions, with whom you can share experiences, and whom you can use to trigger new ideas is really a great opportunity. And I can think of no better organizations than to do that than Scouting and Freemasonry. So if I may ask for Governor Obeah and for Most Worshipful Django to arrange such face-to-face meetings when they're possible. We do this nationally in the UK every 6 months or so, and it's proved very, very fruitful. So I think that's my first answer. My second answer, Teddy, would be to encourage people at all levels of Scouting and Freemasonry within the Philippines to reach out to other, the other organization within their local communities. Masonic lodges and Scout groups. It's quite incredible how similar they are in their own organizations. They're community-based. They have to attract and to satisfy the needs and expectations of their members. They have to manage, they have different people in different roles doing different jobs. They have to manage finances and resources and facilities. And indeed, they may be able to share some of those resources and facilities. It's quite incredible the opportunities at local level if Scout groups and Masonic lodges speak with each other. And to those of you who are Freemasons, let me tell you, this isn't all about making financial donations to Scout groups. This is about how we can share skills and experiences at local level as well, and how we can support each other. And I think the other thing I would ask, and in response to your question, Teddy, this I realise may have is highly dependent on cultural issues and how the two organisations are perceived within wider Philippine society. But where it is possible, I would ask and encourage Scouts and Freemasons to be public about those similarities that we've all acknowledged and recognised. If I put that into a UK context, Scouting has a very good reputation in the UK, Freemasonry less so. Freemasonry has been through a difficult period in the United Kingdom, where for many years we kept very quiet about Freemasonry and we didn't draw attention to our existence, let alone what we did. We're now changing that, and the public is beginning to realise just how good Freemasonry is and what it does in our communities. I think it would be very helpful and very useful if Scouting and Freemasonry were happy to acknowledge that relationship, which we've acknowledged here today. So I hope that addresses your questions, Teddy. What a wonderful question it was, and what a wonderful opportunity you've given me to talk about the future, which is really, for us as leaders, where we should be paying our future attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I hope that response resonated with many of us here. I understand the Chief of Staff of the Grand Masters, Dong Roque, is present, so I'm sure he's taking notes. But what I would encourage is that all of us who are members of the Scouting movement, who are also in the craft, that we take the initiative to reach out to the the Boy Scouts with the Governor Obed, so we can hopefully create stronger relations. That leads me to my second question to Governor Obed. I think you're surrounded, as you can see, by a lot of Masons here, and I thank you for accepting our invitation. That leads me to be curious, speaking as a the leader of the Boy Scouts, and looking towards not just the Freemasons but also the Demolays. Governor Obed, are there, in your view, opportunities to promote Scouting through our fraternities? Because as we know, in the Philippines, you've had a very strong relationship with the Department of Education in promoting Scouting. Do you think our Freemasonry and maybe even the Demolays can do the same and help you doing that?
Yes, thank you again for inviting me, and I'm really learning a lot and really crystallizing some thoughts about how we can move forward together. I'm really very happy to have learned more about the parallelism between the two organizations and how we can work together, from Scouter and our guest speaker, Tony Harvey. And indeed, I see a lot of possibilities, and that should begin with, as he suggested, the leadership at the top level and the leadership at the local levels working together. And we intend to promote that at the national level, because I'm so happy to really have realized. I must confess that I also didn't realize a lot of things until you invited me. I didn't know that Edwin Elser, who started Scouting, was a past Grand Master of Freemasonry. I knew that Quezon was, Manuel Quezon was, I knew Rizal was, but I didn't know that it was the Freemasons who supported Scouting all the way, from the inception until it was organized. They contributed money to support Scouting at the beginning, together with, of course, the others, YMCA and other things. But the Freemasons were the ones who spearheaded that. And therefore, I will certainly pursue that and bring it up to the National Executive Board. I took note, for instance, of the Daniel Carter Bid Award. And once we have met and figured out how we can work together, I would like to initiate an award to be given to Freemasons who are supporting of Scouting. And at least to put it on record that, For instance, 4 out of 7, imagine, 4 out of 7 founding fathers of Boy Scouting are Freemasons. And I offhand, personally, I thought that Manuel Camus Award would be a very good choice because he was a past Grand Master of Freemasons, and he was actively supporting this. So yes, the answer, the quick answer to that is yes, and we will explore that possibility. Let me, before going any further, also acknowledge that one active participant, I just noted it in the chat box, is the president, national president of the Eagle Scout Association of the Philippines, Paulo Cruz. And welcome, Paulo. I happy to see you. And I'm sure that he and the others will be very actively supporting this movement. And we certainly will pursue this, President Teddy. And as Tony said, once a scout, you're always a scout. So Teddy himself is a scout, so it's also always a scout. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Obed. Yes,
Teddy,
Tony.
may I just, do you mind if I come in? First of
Go
all,
ahead.
I want to say thank you, Governor Obed, for making that commitment. I think that's a tremendous act, which I think will go so far because, both Scouting and Freemasonry, we do like dressing up, don't we? And I say that without intending to be irreverent in any way, but we do. And I think the visual representation of that, of what we all know, is so important in our organizations. And I thank you for that. May I take this opportunity to say, I am very happy to be a sounding board, or if you wish to consult with me in terms of ideas or thoughts or sharing further experiences, please do get in touch. Teddy can tell you my contact details, and that goes for you, Governor, and for you, Most Worshipful, and of course for the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. If there's anything I can do to assist or just to be a source of ideas, please treat me in that manner.
Thank you.
Very
quickly, President Teddy, let me just say something. Yes. Another person I'd like to acknowledge here was the one who helped me research on these connections between the Freemasons and the Boy Scouting. The former Chief National Commissioner of Boy Scouts of the Philippines, an active Scouter and Freemason, Tony Uy from Davao. He's with you. He's with us also. So let's just acknowledge. Thank you very much. Daghang salamat, Tony. And thank you very much again, Tony Harvey. I'm very happy to meet lots of Tony leaders in Freemasonry and Scouting today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Obed. And going back to you, Tony, it would help if you post your website and your email address so that Governor Obed and everybody who would want to reach out to you can do so personally. Now, having said that, Grandmaster Django, I am not leaving you out. You've talked a lot about threes. Now, I'd like your response. I mean, in terms of the three organizations, what opportunities do you think are there for us to really collaborate? And, speaking as a Demolay myself and a scout, at least a Cub Scout and a Freemason, I mean, I think this is a real opportunity for the Demolays and independently of the Freemasons to work together. What do you think?
Yes, thank you, MSS President. I think the best we can help to the Boy Scout is we train our boys, because we have membership of boys from 12 to 17.
Yes.
So we have 103 chapters all over the country. So we can collaborate. We train these young boys to become Boy Scouts. So leaderships and special skills are good to collaborate. So that's I think is the best that we can do. And because Freemasonry has the sponsorship of this Masonic organization, the youth organization, through the Supreme Council Order of Demolay. So that's the one that I think the best. And if that one, we will have our courtesy call to our governor, president, to have that agreement to train our boys to become Boy Scout. We have 103 chapters all over the country. So it's the best that we train our boys. So
thank you so much, Grandmaster Do you have a response, Governor Obet?
Thank you very
didn't wanna-
much. I look forward to that. The Grandmaster Django Durano, yes. And also, if I may just add, look forward to meeting also again personally, Grandmaster Roland Polino, who is a former mayor of Olongapo City and who organized that. I wish him well, speedy recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Obet. On our end, yes, Tony, go ahead.
I just want, I think the comment that Most Worshipful Django has just made is so important. I want to emphasize something that a lot of people seem to, I don't know what your experience is, but in my experience, a lot of people seem to forget that young people can join more than one organization. The fact that a young person joins the Scouts doesn't mean they can't join Demolay.
Yeah.
The fact that a young person joins Demolay doesn't mean they can't. Young people choose for themselves what they wish to do with their time. And many of them choose to join multiple organizations. And therefore, we are not competing. We are working together, and we're offering a wide range of opportunities for young people. And what is wonderful is the focus today on leadership. And that's what we need for the future, for our future prosperity and the future principled society that we all want. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And on that end, I'd like to highlight that that's not just happening at the youth level. In April of this year, when I was finishing my term as Senior Grand Lecturer, I was fortunate to witness the signing of a memorandum of agreement between two fraternities, our Grand Lodge and the Knights of Rizal, to work towards collaboration, and to build the spirit of fraternalism. Before I go to my last question, I'd just like to recognize that on the part of MSN, we will be using our research councils. Will be assigning a research council to help Grandmaster Django and hopefully Governor Obet to get this collaboration together. And in that regard, I'd like to recognize two important Demolays who are present with us. Our immediate Grandmaster of the Demolays here, Edison Abella, who is our chair of our membership committee. That says a lot. And this executive officer, Eric, who is also here with us today. So that looks really promising. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I only have one final question before we go to the Q&A from the general membership. And this I'd like to address to all three of you, starting with Tony, then Grandmaster Django, and then we'll have Governor Obet. We've spoken so much about collaboration so far, but as you know, the Masonic Society of Nationhood is also focused on nation building, particularly civic engagement. With regards to our discussion today, do you have specific ideas on how we together can specifically foster civic engagement here in the Philippines? And I'd like an international perspective first from you, Tony, if you have, with your experiences in both organizations. Civic engagement.
Civic engagement. I think this is a wonderful question. If I look at it from a scouting perspective, as we mentioned earlier, scouting has always had a role in civic society, has always sought to contribute to our local communities. We are part of our local communities. The idea of scouts doing a good turn, one person helping another, is the seed which, if we develop it, becomes us contributing to our communities. And for me, whether it's scouting or Freemasonry and our civic engagement, it has to start at relationship building. It has to start with people sitting together, getting to know each other, building rapport, sharing their views and their principles, and identifying what they have in common rather than what separates them. And it's based upon what we have in common that we can build collaboration. So from both a scouting and a Freemasonry point of view, I would ask, and certainly, based upon my experiences here in the UK, where Freemasonry is now coming out into the visible world, and we are, for example, appearing in public in our Masonic regalia, we're attending civic events, we are contributing to what civic society is doing, and we're doing it as Freemasons. We're making it clear that we are Freemasons in attending, in contributing, in taking part. So if your Grand Lodge and the Scouts in the Philippines are happy for you to be visible, then that's certainly the second thing. Based on number one, relationship building, people to people, senior to senior, local to local. Number two, visibility. Be present, be visible. And number three, always bear in mind that the giving of time and money is helping others, and is something which makes it clear to others that we are supportive of we're talking about civic society. So one of the things we are trying to do as Freemasons is to make sure that when we donate money to charity, we're donating to local causes, to causes that are making an impact or which are needed in civic society, in our local communities. So I think that's a very important aspect, to use our charitable, and I don't just mean money, I mean time as well, to use our charitable resources to support those things which are aligned to our civic priorities. I think, off the top of my head, I'm sure if I had longer to reflect on the question, I might come out with some other responses, but I think
We'll get you back.
and I would welcome that. I mean, I don't know to what extent Freemasonry in the Philippines has a charitable organization within it or parallel to it. Here in the UK, because of the legal system, we have a separate charity. It's a Masonic charity, but it's a separate organization. I'm privileged to be a trustee of that central Masonic charity. But of course, we work very closely with our membership organization, the United Grand Lodge. And what we tend to do is identify shared priorities in our civic communities and in terms of our civic engagement. I think the other point I would make before quickly moving on is developing relationships with the media. They are an important stakeholder in our civic engagement. But I've learned also not to put so much into national media, because national media isn't always as effective as getting our message across as local media and social media. But that's a situation here in the UK that may or may not translate to the Philippines.
Thank you so much, Tony. I particularly like your emphasis on relationship building and particularly visibility. Two decades ago, public events like this in my country would have been very hard to do. And we're following the UK's lead in really pushing, changing perspectives, and really engaging with the public now, particularly with our external stakeholders like the Boy Scouts under Governor Obet. What I don't think you pointed out, which you did raise, is the fact that in the United Kingdom, all the charities are centralized. And what I like is that the law now provides for you to what you call the gift aid,
Yes.
where you can credit in exchange for giving to Masonic charities. That can be credited as part of your, I think, income tax or something. So that's something that we're going to look at here, where you folks are leading the way. Grandmaster Django, do you have suggestions given the discussion today?
My suggestions regarding collaboration with projects, is that saving skills, of the Boy Scouts training. That's very important, that our boys can train with that life savings skills, and that's one best projects that we can share to our local government in every chapters, that we have the boys that train in special skills, and also this Demole, and the same time he's a Boy Scout, as what our lecturer, Worshipful Brother Tony Harvey, that the boys can goes to any other organizations, So that's, I think, is number one, that for a project, to be done in our local government units in every chapters, no, for that collaboration with that emergency projects. The Boy Scout has the special skills in training, life savings.
Yeah.
That's number one of the Boy Scout. So
That's
I think that's one of my thinking of collaboration with that projects to the Boy Scout.
Thank you very much, Grandmaster Django. And last but not the least, before we go to questions from our general membership, Governor Obet.
Thank you. I think that's a very good idea. The matter of life savings. Scouts normally do that. We used to do that, artificial respiration activities, fires, what the things you do, extinguish fires. A lot of the things are really part and parcel of training life-saving skills. But we need probably this time to really give it a little bit more emphasis, noting that the Philippines is in the so-called secular fire, and therefore disasters really come quite often, both from natural and man-made disasters in the country. So I think that's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Grandmaster Django. Yeah.
Okay, thank you also. Thank you, Governor Obet. Thank you, Grandmaster Django. And thank you, Tony, for that very productive session. We're not through yet. I'm now going to turn over the floor to Director General Ozone for your questions. I think there are maybe a couple. Go ahead. It's yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Press Teddy. Very well moderated panel discussion, quite a robust exchange of thoughts. Thank you to Brother Tony Harvey and of course our panelists, Grandmaster Durano and Governor Obet. Now for the questions, we have a couple indeed. Number one is coming from participant or an attendee who's an Eagle Scout, a Dimole, and a Freemason. And he's saying, in Boy Scouts of America, I have seen them wearing Scouts uniform and likewise the apron, the Masonic apron. And perhaps the question is intended for you, Brother Tony, on how it is there in your side of the world when it comes to wearing both the Boy Scouts uniform and the Masonic apron in one event. Brother Tony?
Well, thank you very much indeed for the question, Paolo. Paolo, would you mind just waving to me so that I can see where you are on the screen? It just helps me to. Okay, so it's an excellent question. And first, in answering, I should say that in both cases, or rather in all cases, we always make sure that we obey the rules regarding uniform. In terms of Scout uniform, but also Masonic regalia. So when we wear in the UK, whenever we wear Scout uniform at a Masonic event, it's current Scout uniform. It's only worn by current members of the Scouts. So it's not a heritage or reenactment or nostalgic exercise. It's in connection with the fact that we are current members of the organization. And similarly in terms of, and also that when wearing uniform, there are certain rules about when we can wear uniform and when we can't. So we can't wear uniform, for example, at a political event. Well, Freemasonry clearly is not a political event. From a Masonic point of view, we can only wear Masonic regalia in public when we have permission granted from what for you would be the district deputy Grand Master, or indeed the Grand Master. So if it was in a public event, we must have permission for that. So, for example, at our annual Remembrance Parade, where we honour those who served our country and laid down their life for our country, I parade in my Scout uniform and my Masonic collar. But I've got permission to do that. What we also do is we, on particular occasions and in particular lodges, wear Scout uniform with full Masonic regalia. But that's not a public event. That's a private event for lodges. Now, in those circumstances, we seek the permission of the local Masonic authorities, and it tends to be Scout lodges. In other words, lodges founded for members of the Scouts who wear uniform in Masonic lodges. So I often am in that position, but it's always with the permission of the local Masonic authorities. So clearly the rules are likely to be different in the Philippines, and I would never encourage people to wear Masonic regalia over Scout uniform unless it was locally accepted and allowed. I can only tell you what we do here. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Brother Tony. So in short, it's best to seek clearance first. The other question that we received, aside from a lot of other suggestions in terms of collaboration between the Boy Scouts of the Philippines and Freemasonry and the Timolays, we have another question here. The dramatization or ritualization in terms of lessons conveyed for Freemasons is very central to Freemasonry. And Brother Tony, has there been a parallel technique being used in the Boy Scouts when it comes to teaching them moral self-development?
Thank you for the question. I'm not seeing the question in the chat area, so it would be helpful.
It was by SMS, Brother Tony.
Oh, right, okay. Can I just ask the audience if they'd put the question in the chat area, because it's very helpful to me to be able to read the question as well. Use of ritual. Well, within Scouting, there are certain ritualistic elements within Scouting. There certainly when we make great use of ceremony. So when we invest a Scout and they take their Scout promise, we often add elements of ceremony around that. I mentioned in the lecture with our hand, we take the Scout promise with our hand on the flag, for example, and there are often ceremonies surrounding the progression of a Scout from one age group to the next age group. Within the Cubs, the younger age range, we have the Grand Howl, for example, which is based upon Kipling's use of allegory from the Jungle Book stories. There have been, over the years, particularly in the early years of Scouting, there have been attempts to introduce into Scouting something which has more ritual associated with it. So the best known of those is Rover Scouting, and I don't know how Rover Scouting is practiced in the Philippines, but in the early days of Rover Scouting, it no longer exists in the UK. But when it was introduced in Scouting's early days, there was a ceremony which many people have compared to a Masonic initiation. And some people have even suggested that it was Masonically influenced. I don't think it was, actually. I think when you look at the ceremony, although it bears many comparisons with a Masonic initiation, it also bears many similarities with other initiatory rites going back over hundreds of years and to do with orders of chivalry, etc. We also have within the Boy Scouts of America, we have the Order of the Arrow, which is an honor society within the Boy Scouts of America, and that has ritual elements in its grading system. There have been other attempts to form something like that. In general, Robert Baden-Powell wasn't very much in favor. There was a system called the Empire Sentinels, which was started in New Zealand by a Scout and Freemason there. That didn't last very long, and there was an attempt to form another one within the UK. That didn't get off the ground. Baden-Powell wasn't that he wasn't that impressed with them. He felt that they lacked the spirit of adventure. So other than little elements of ritual or ceremonial, Scout for the younger, for young people, it doesn't feature highly. We have salutes, we've seen the Scout salute and so forth, but that's not quite the same as ritual. I think for anybody who's an outsider, they would see certain institutionalized patterns of behavior, which you might say, well, there's a there's a regular pattern there, which you might call a ritual, but that's not ritual in the sense that we would use the term Masonically. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Brother Tony. That's all I have actually. Just a couple of questions that came in. So I guess for the wrap up and concluding remarks, I'll have to give the floor back to President Teddy.
Thank you. Thank you, DG Ozone. I'd like to again, I've actually, for the closing remarks today, in view of the absence of our Grandmaster, Vice Chair Boy and I will be sharing this. I just like to, before I go into my 4 points, I'd like to extend my deepest thanks to our inaugural international speaker, Tony Harvey, Governor Obet, and Grandmaster Django for making this truly a very productive session. And in that regard, my first of 4 points before I transition to Vice Chair Boy is, if you want to thank Tony personally, please go out. He has provided the link for his book. I'm ordering, so you know the book is based on his lecture, and I think you'll find it it's a very handy reference, particularly if you're in both organizations. So please, if you want to thank Tony Harvey personally for today, go out and use the link to buy his book. There it is. Okay. Secondly, I'd like to greet everyone. This is a very special weekend because the MSN, we're having a fellowship on Rizal Day, his birthday. And not only that, tomorrow is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day and happy Rizal. Happy birthday to our national hero today. And it's fortunate that we've had it this weekend. Third thing I'd want to highlight is, as you can see, for those of you who are Freemasons who have joined us, this is very different from what we normally have in terms of either meetings or fellowships. And that's the point of MSN. As Tony has highlighted, we are not just brethren, but non-Masons who are getting together to make the craft and fraternalism more visible. And I'm happy that this second quarter, we have been able to achieve that, with these kinds of discussion. We not only have here the president, the national president of the Eagle Scouts, Paulo Cruz. I'd also like to give a hello over there to my fellow Rotarian, Albert Alday. And hopefully, as we go through the years, we'll have greater and greater engagement. Not just, it's time we stop talking just among ourselves and go out and reach and show what our fraternity can contribute to other stakeholders. And for that, I'm very grateful for the Boy Scouts participation here through Governor Obet. If you want to join, for those of you who are non-Masons today, you can always join us. The society is not limited to Freemasons. And just email me if I'll put my email when Vice Chair Boy is making his closing remarks. Just email me if you want us to join. Just to show you the interest that we're getting, our speaker has applied to be member, and we are actually currently reviewing his academic evidence, because it is likely, we go by process. It is likely, given his academic work, and I highlight that because the dean of our College of Fellows is here. Because we process it first come first serve, he might end up being our first international fellow, but I don't want to preempt anything. So we'll see, Tony. It's now being reviewed by our College of Fellows. And if you want to join us, if you're not a Mason, remember, you don't have to be a Mason to join MSN. And with that, the fourth thing I'd want to highlight is look out for our next fellowship this fourth quarter. We look forward to having you again with topics just like this, topics that you would not see in a regular Masonic meeting. And with that, I'd like to turn over for the real closing remarks to the Vice Chairman of our Board of Trustees and the Chair of our Governance and Strategy Committee, Most Worshipful Boy. Most Worshipful Boy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Teddy. I suspect that the reason why you assigned this to me is because since I was the one who opened, it's only right that I be the one to close. In the absence of the our Grandmaster, which is indisposed. Well, at the beginning of the lecture, Worshipful Tony made us take notice that the title of the lecture is ended with a question mark. After we have all listened to the realization that indeed there are many similarities, I think on the part of the Filipino Mason share or the Filipino share, Worshipful Tony, we can change that into an exclamation point. It's no longer a question, but it's a realization that indeed there are so many similarities, especially on the self-moral development, which is primary in our fraternity of Freemasons, the service to others, and the method of promotion. And I think all of these shared values could easily outweigh the differences that you mentioned. And so I believe that we really have to continue with what we have been talking about, which is the result of this lecture, a possible collaboration between Freemasonry and the Scouting movement. There is an emerging term being used nowadays on the interaction among organizations and even people. We call it complementation. Complementation in the sense that what we have, you can use. What you have that we can use, and we can join together and collaborate and make our two organizations synergize and be more relevant and more effective. We are in the period of so fast changing times, especially with the pandemic and with the advent of technology. Perhaps our two organizations, more importantly Masonry, has so many traditions and old practices that we are so afraid of violating. But I know, you know, perhaps we have come to a point in our organization's life that perhaps we have to restudy all of these old traditions to be able to cope up with the changing times. Like what I heard, the wearing of aprons and the wearing of uniforms, you know, there are really restrictions. And I hope that through the research that will be done by MSN, we can propose changes without compromising on these values that we share, which these two organizations share. So in closing, we have made so many plans already because we are all excited by this new realization that we have. We have made plans already. We have made we have shared ideas already. The next step now is for us to do the implementation. There is a common joke being circularized, and you've heard, many of you have heard this. You know, we always hear that you know, when you apply for a telephone with PLDT, and they will say, oh, you already have the telephone, you still want a dial tone? Likewise, we have plans already, which we have shared tonight. We have ideas, beautiful ideas on how we can collaborate, we can complement each other. And do you still want this to be implemented? Perhaps that's our next task, to see to it that there will be a next step that will bring us to the realization of what we have discussed tonight. So this is a very fruitful evening. As I mentioned in my opening, I hope this becomes an evening of enlightenment. Indeed, it was truly enlightening. And thank you all. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Paring Obet. Thank you, Django. And thank you all. And you mentioned another Boy Scout here, the national president of the Eagle Scouts of the Philippines. He is our junior warden in my mother lodge, Paulo Cruz, Malolos Lodge number 46. And so we're looking forward to another exciting topic on our next fellowship evening. And so thank you again all in behalf again of the Board of Trustees of President Teddy. We thank you all for a very wonderful evening. Good evening and good night.
Salamat, Father. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of our event for this evening. For those who are interested to join the Mabini Society for Nationhood, we have in the chat group the link for the membership form. Just partake of that. Thank you once again, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Brother Ozone, you want a picture for everyone? If you can invite them to open their...
Yes, we invite everyone to open their cameras, yes, so that we can take a photo. We have to do it twice, okay? Here comes the first one. 1, 2, and 3.